But we've been talking about a lot of statements and sustainability. We got to talk about those OKC Thunder, man, because on Saturday night, OKC would head into the Mile High City against the champs, back with Jamal Murray. And this game was wild, man. You had the Nuggets with double-digit leads deep into the fourth quarter. And then from there, OKC's big three took over. You had signature blocks from Chet Holmgren, Jalen Williams adding in some couple of signature plays in crunch time. 24 points for Jalen Williams. Chet Holmgren, 17 points, 11 rebounds, 9 block shots. And when they needed the bucket, who else do they go to but their guy? Ice water in his veins. The closer, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, man, with 8 seconds left, steps into his shot, gets a turnaround jumper, and they literally just walks off the court after they deflect the Nuggets inbound pass. Hey, Thunder, 118-117, second in the West. Statement signature victory this year against the champs, man. What was your impressions about this game?
That was a huge win for this team. And I think I had Jalen Williams, my podcast, a couple weeks ago, and he was talking about how so much of the talk about this Thunder team is about the future draft picks and everything. Like, you know, you hear nationally, oh, they have X number of first round picks over the next 5 years. And I get it. Like, it's very exciting to see how many picks they have. And everyone's wondering, okay, what are they going to do? Are they going to trade some of these picks for a key player now? Are they going to just keep drafting guys and kind of hope they fit in with this core? But enough talk all season long and entering the season, no one was talking about just that this team could win right now and the group that they have currently. And it is a fun team. I think Chet has fit perfectly with this group, and it's a bummer that he missed last season with his injury. But, you know, he has been fantastic. And I think he really benefited from last year, even though he wasn't able to play, just being behind the scenes and, you know, being with NBA strength and conditioning coaches and kind of having those NBA resources and just kind of watching and learning from coaches and everything. I think that really helped him. SGA, I mean, he's become one of the best players in the league, one of the best guards in the league, especially. I mean, you can't really argue that. He's just so dominant as a driver, even when his shot's not falling from three. I think over the last 5 games, he's 1 of 11 from 3, but he's still able to dominate because he can just get to the rim and, you know, create for others. So I love this core that they have in place. Again, you go back to like sustainable young cores, this team's not going anywhere. And even if they do lose like one piece, like, you know, if there's someone that they're not able to afford, they have so many draft picks that they're going to be able to replace those guys pretty easily. So yeah, I think this team's going to be very good for a long time. It kind of reminds me of Orlando and just being a team that's ahead of schedule. Like, I think a lot of people expected this team to be a contender eventually, just because with all the young players and assets that they have. But to do it this year, you know, for a while there, Orlando and OKC were both 3rd in their respective conference. Like, that is crazy to see both of these teams kind of already winning games. So yeah, and then to beat a team like Denver, that is huge as a confidence booster. That just says a ton for this team in terms of where they're at. And I think it's great for them too, because they're going to get more attention and more love nationally. Yeah. Like, obviously they're near the top of the standings, but to beat a team like Denver says a lot. So yeah, it's a lot of fun watching this team. Again, another team that not only are they winning games, they're a really, really fun team to watch. And I wish the NBA would put teams like Orlando or OKC or Indiana like on national TV more, because they're not getting enough attention.
Yeah, no question about it, man. And, you know, I remember vividly 2 years ago, I was at Summer League watching Chet in his debut, and I was speaking to one of my co-hosts over at NBA Radio and Sirius XM, former NBA great in his own right. But, you know, we were sitting there talking on the baseline, and I was just getting his thoughts on this OKC team. And he's like, you know, look, they got some promising young players. The only question is when will Presti, basically in lesser words, when will Presti decide to stop tanking and start fielding a competitive team out there? And like you said, you know, we don't give enough time for chemistry to build, stability, year after year growth. And here you are, you look at this team, and yes, SGA was a traded acquisition, but he's been there for such a minute now. I almost consider him a core piece, obviously a core piece, but almost like homegrown. But then look around him, and it's Jalen Williams, homegrown. It's Chet. who's transformed their defense, homegrown. I mean, you look at guys night in and night out that are just running around. Their depth is so incredible. One night it might be Isaiah Joe. Next night it's Ousmane Deng. It's Wiggins. It's Kenrick Williams.
Yeah.
They just can throw so much at you, so much young talent. But that core of SGA, J. Will, and Chet, that's it.
Yeah.
That's it. You got to be careful when you're thinking about what they should upgrade with. I don't want to see Jalen Williams lead this team, man. I don't want to
That's
see.
the thing. Like they're gonna have many opportunities to land other star players, and whether that's through trade. I mean, right now, if they were to pick up a phone and call any GM in the league, they can put together the best offer and
Yeah,
the best trade offer,
by far.
depending on how much they're willing to give up, obviously. But if they wanted to, they could just drop a bunch of first round picks on the table and they beat every offer. So if a player becomes available, they can be at the front of the line there. And then just as far as I think one thing that doesn't get talked about enough is they do a great job at not only recognizing draft studs. They do a great job of finding guys at the top of the draft, but also finding like diamonds in the rough. But they
Yeah.
also develop players so well. This is dating back to like the Kevin Durant, James Harden, Russell Westbrook days. They do a great job of like putting each player on like a custom developmental plan, not only working on them, working on like their skills and on-court stuff, but like from a nutrition standpoint, a sleep standpoint. That's one of the things I've heard from multiple players that, they just really all facets of their life, not even just their game. They really help them kind of maximize their potential. So when a guy lands there, I know there were rumors that Chet wanted to go to OKC so bad that like he left his Orlando meeting and workout early. Like he wanted to be in OKC that badly that he didn't even finish his workout and then didn't even go to the dinner that was like scheduled afterwards with the Magic front office because he wanted to be in OKC. And again, for a team like OKC, a small market team, that says a lot. And I think it's because they have such a reputation for maximizing guys' potential. Obviously, he saw the opportunity that was there as far as playing time and all that. But I just think they deserve a ton of credit for not only finding these guys in the draft, but also helping them kind of maximize their potential there with everything they do in these custom developmental plans. But yeah, I mean, Chet, I've been so impressed with him too. I thought he'd be dominant defensively from day one just because he's always been a great defender. But the fact that he's averaging 17 points, shooting, almost 37% from three, shooting 53% from the field, like that's really impressive for a guy that's known for his defense. The fact that he's been so impactful offensively. So yeah, I agree with you. I think this young core, it's really interesting to see what Sam Presti is going to do because this young core is already so good that they have all these picks, but like even if they didn't have any picks over the next couple of drafts, we're talking about the Thunder as being like a great contender probably once this core kind of reaches their full potential. So I don't know. To your point, you don't want to mess it up with a trade. You don't want to mess it up by bringing in the wrong pieces. But it's also a great problem to have.
Yeah. And as you said, you already expected him to give them a lift defensively. But offensively, he looks like a vet, man.
It's crazy.
And it's not just as a rim runner. He's legitimately turning into a guy that you can rely on to get you points in crunch time because he has almost that similar poise that SGA has as your point guard. So now you have two pillars of your team that have established themselves as go-to guys that everybody else can kind of just play around and play their roles. And it's just impressive. Now, the 9 blocks, I mean, the one that he had on Aaron Gordon when crunch time started, about 5 minutes left in the game, where Aaron Gordon thinks he's got him beat, and Chet just gobbles that thing up, man. I mean, that to me was the turning point of that game. And even though there were several lead changes by that point, it almost just felt like OKC at that point was like, all right, just a couple more right here. We got this. And they took it home, man, with SGA at the end.
100%. I think when you have a guy that can block shots like that, obviously it's early in his career, so guys are still going at him. But as he continues to play well, and eventually I'm guessing he's going to get, all defensive team honors of the season, he's going to start getting buzz as he continues in his career as like a defensive player of the year candidate. Teams are going to start going away from him. Like it's like the Rudy Gobert effect where guys just won't go in the paint or attempt shots near him because he's such a good shot blocker. And that's going to happen. And I think the fact I mentioned earlier that Boston was top 5 in offense and defense, the next closest team is OKC. They're number 7 in offense and defense. So to be doing that as such a young team is just so wild. And I think Chet is a huge reason for that defense being up to number 7. Let me see. I'm curious what they were last year. That's a interesting.
Their defense last last year?
Last year, I have it. They were
Like 14,
number
I think.
16 last year. Yeah.
16,
Or tied for
16.
15 with New York,
There you
actually.
go.
So
Yeah.
you're,
Yeah.
yeah. So there we go. So to go
Yeah.
from that to now being, a top 7 defense, I think that's almost entirely Chet and, probably some internal development from others. But he's been such a game changer for them. He's such a perfect fit for today's modern NBA, too. A guy that can block 3 shots a game and then go knock down threes. I mean, every single team is looking for that kind of guy.
They were 19th last year in an opponent's 2-point percentage. This year,
There you go.
they're fourth.
Wow.
10th last year in opponent shooting at the rim. This year, they're fourth.
And he's 5th best in the league in whenever he's the closest defender in terms of like the opponent field goal percentage.
Yeah.
I saw that earlier today too.
Yeah.
So I mean, and to do that as a rookie, again, it's so hard.
Looking
Typically
at that.
young guys have a hard time defending at a high level because they have a hard time adjusting to the speed of the game, the competition level. For him to do this as a rookie, there's so many rookies in this year's class that are defending at a really high rate. You look at Wemby, Asar Thompson, Craig Porter Jr. in Cleveland had that stretch where he was playing really well. There's a lot of really good defenders in this class, which is, that's usually not the norm. It usually takes rookies like, at least half a season or a year to really get comfortable defending. But it just shows how talented these guys are as defenders.
A lot of the talented defenders. I mean, Casey Wallace, teammate Chet on OKC as well. And then in that game, there's, the dynamic in terms of Chet at the 5, Chet at the 4, whatever the case may be. Saturday night, you had big Jalen Williams take on some of the Jokic assignment. Chet still had to handle some of it, but yeah, big Jalen Williams take on Jokic. He himself spreading the floor 3 or 4 from downtown. What do you like about that dynamic with their ability to go smaller with Chet and then go bigger with big Jalen Williams?
I love it. So I should specify, big Jalen Williams was the one that was on my show. And
Okay.
I was able to talk to him about that a little bit. And he's always been a fan of Chet. They've known each other for years, just from playing against each other in high school and things like that. So when they drafted Chet, he had told me, this is like a once in a generation type talent. He was really high on Chet. And then he said last year, they saw like flashes from Chet behind the scenes when he was working out. And they were all just like so excited to get this guy healthy because they knew what he'd be for, as far as a difference maker for this team. But yeah, I love the fact that they have him to turn to. He's one of those guys that you love to have on your team, but you hate to play against because he's always drawing charges. He's a great defender, good rebounder. Again, it just goes back to this team not only has really good star players, but because they've been able to hit on draft picks and develop guys, their role players are really good too. I'm a big Lou Dort fan. I think they have a lot of guys that kind of fill their roles well and kind of star in their role. And that's only going to continue. Like if they continue to add guys through the draft, I'm sure they're going to just try to piece guys around this core that they have. So they're going to be able to find, more specialists and role players and kind of help maximize their potential. But yeah, I love that duo. I think they really complement each other nicely. And it seems like they get along really well off the court too, which is great. Both of these teams, kind of drawing comparisons again between Orlando and OKC, they remind me of like a college program. And I think it's part of being such a young team. Like sometimes you look at, some of these older teams where guys have family and kids and they don't really hang out as much. But when you're, the youngest team in the league and the 5th youngest team in the league, I think that's what these teams are. All these guys are kind of at the same like stage of their life where, they don't have families. A lot of them aren't married. So they spend a ton of time together. And like this Orlando team, I've been around them. A lot of teams too, they're teammates, but they're competing for the same minutes. They're competing for the same, slice of the salary cap.
Yeah.
I just talked about this with CJ Miles on my show, and he was saying that like there's relationships in the NBA locker room, but they're very complex. And he was talking about when he entered the league in Utah out of high school, he was coming in like, oh, these guys are going to be my best friends. And they were like, you're trying to take our job and take our money. And he was like, that was a total shock to me. Whereas like you look in Orlando, Cole Anthony gets his extension and they all took him out to dinner and had this big celebration. Like it feels like a family almost. And I know that gets thrown around like it's a cliche thing, but I do think when it's a young group, it happens more often, I would say. Like I've seen that happen a number of times now over the years. It's always these younger teams where it kind of feels like a college program and guys kind of root for each other and they don't really view it that way of like, hey, you're coming for my job. And it's usually like, oh, let me celebrate my teammate's success. I think you see that in both Orlando and OKC where the guys seem really close. They do hold each other accountable, but it feels like a family and like a close-knit team. So that's also something that I've kind of spotted in both of these teams in their ascent so far.